Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Film for Impact. I am so excited about our guest today, the Miss Great Sarah Mosses. I met Sarah last year doing an internship at Together Films for my master's program. And let me tell you, this was the best internship I've ever been a part of. I felt valued. I felt like people cared about what I had to say. I was included in projects. I learned so much. And let me tell you about the company culture. I felt like I could bring my whole self to work every day. And I loved that it always felt like as a team, we're working on films, but we're working on a bigger mission. And I just really had a great time with Together Films, and it was the best internship I've been a part of. So I just want to thank you, thank your team, and I'm going to get into Sarah's amazing bio. So, Sarah Mosses is the founder and CEO of Together Films, a marketing, distribution, and technology company serving the international film community from their offices in London and New York City. She has acted as the head of marketing for leading film festivals, including Sheffield Doc Fest in Sheffield in the UK, Doc NYC in New York, Human Rights Watch Film Festival in London and New York, and the Athena Film Festival in New York. She is passionate about serving filmmakers to increase their social impact, reach, and revenue for multi award winning titles like For Sama, Unrest, The Tale, and Roll Red Roll. She also helps a variety of industry and brand clients to optimize their business performance through technology and operational support, such as Sony, Patagonia, and the Documentary Producers Alliance. And y'all, let me tell you about Together's film. Operational and technology is on point. Sarah has it on point. Get that data, get that information, get it all organized. Let me tell you, Sarah recently graduated from the prestigious Inside Pictures Film Leadership course and was selected for the Mayor of London's International Growth Program, including trade visits to NYC and LA, where Sarah will support strategy development. Welcome, Sarah.
Thanks so much for having me. It's so nice to hear your thoughts on the internship as well, because we really value having like amazing new humans join our crew for kind of those moments of internships. And I always hope it's like such a good thing for them because we love having you with us. So I love that you started with like your own experience there. And you were such a great asset with us for the few months that you were with us. It was so great to have your joyful, fun, energetic presence in our team for that time. So thank you so much for everything that you did for us as well.
Oh, man, thank you. It was great, both sides. I'm forever team Together Films. So so let's just jump right in. Let's go back to tell me when you first fell in love with films.
Loved films for a very long time. When I was younger, growing up, I would be a big consumer. I'd watch a lot of content. I'd watch a lot of films, and I originally thought I would be sort of in front of the camera style for my kind of life and career. I used to be a musician. I would perform on like kind of high school sort of musicals and performances and things like that. And one of my teachers when I was younger was like, I don't think you should do the whole in front of the camera kind of drama school route. You're way too bossy. You're way too like, you have questions, you have ideas. Like, I feel like if you were like on the stage, you'd be like, no, the director, that's not the way to do it. Like, don't do it that way. And I take now bossy in a light-hearted way. It was more like I had ideas, I had passion. I think he just used a very sexist term to describe the way that my kind of brain worked. But I really love the sort of behind the scenes work, and I really love the sort of power that a film could have in terms of reaching multiple audiences. So went on to study at university music and film, and I was still kind of exploring which art form I was going to kind of land in. And I was actually a music teacher kind of for 10 years on the side, teaching music. But film, I really felt you could just reach millions of people with this kind of forum. And it just really felt like the most powerful thing I could kind of go into with films that could make a change and make an impact. And that was the best route for me. So I think my university years, and I went to a university called Sussex in the UK based in Brighton, and it's very sort of forward thinking. There's a lot of sort of progressive movement leaders that have come out of that university who work in the documentary space. So it was a perfect home for me to sort of understand how film could have a powerful attraction kind of in the world.
That's amazing. And I remember you telling also a story when I was interning about the type of instrument you played. Can you share with us?
Yeah, I played many instruments. So in my time, my main instruments were piano and voice, but the school I went to had an amazing music department. And I actually played in a Caribbean steel band for a number of years, which was amazing because you were learning about all these different cultural influences in music. And it's just a joyful, joyful bit of music to play because you play at weddings and summer fairs. And it was just always kind of fun in the summer. So I had a really great musical upbringing at my school. And I think it's such a great way to learn about culture is to kind of embed yourself in new musical areas. So yeah, Caribbean Steel Band was my my musical choice when I was younger.
Yeah, there's just something about the steel drum that it just, I don't know. I'm being half Jamaican, I don't know. I think it uplifts everybody, something about it.
It is
But
just full of joy, and every single song people want to like sing along to, and they just want to start dancing like everywhere. If you go to sort of festivals, just everybody is in a joyful mood. So I
yeah.
love that period of time.
So share with me the first time you you kind of put it together that film can make impact.
I think again this year it started at my university kind of years. One of the modules I studied was representation in film. And it's not something I'd really come across before. It was always around kind of like how do you write a script or what cameras do you use? And this was really interrogating like what is the kind of the role of respect that you have to have as a filmmaker to make sure you're representing people in the right manner. So one of my dissertations at university was the representation of Mexican identity in US kind of studio films. So it was like, how do we view Mexican identity? What is the cultural references we're given? And what does that do for our version of representation of a whole kind of culture? So I was analyzing different projects and really seeing essentially how we were very much stereotyping kind of as an industry, stereotyping using kind of classic tropes of sort of identity kind of politics in these films. And it really opened my eyes to sort of the power that we have on people's understanding of culture at that time. I was then really fortunate during my university time to volunteer for a company now called Doc Society. Previously, it was called BritDoc, which is one of the leading documentary film funds operating in the documentary space. And they had a festival when I was at university, and I volunteered there during my summers to work there. And it was the first time I really saw feature documentaries, kind of cinematic, theatrical docs that were really saying something kind of about the world. And at this point in sort of the mid 2000s, the amount of documentaries in cinema was about like 10 a year in the UK at the time, maybe 12, hardly anywhere in cinema. Fast forward to today, you may have like upwards of 100, maybe 150 coming out in cinemas. So this notion of what we now will understand to being the feature documentary was not sort of a well-known concept in popular audiences time there. So I was watching all these amazing films at this festival, kind of really hearing the stories of sort of impactful work that was coming through. And Doc Society were kind of one of many amazing organizations, such as Working Films in the US, Picture Motion, Film Sprout. There was a number of really great organizers at the time, really interrogating sort of how could we use film for a more impactful purpose. And so a lot of my learning started when I worked at Doc Society. I went on from as soon as I graduated, like that Friday, by the Monday I was in their office kind of working in a role with them. And I really kind of got my bread and butter sort of learning in that environment and could really start to see the connections. And one of the amazing projects that's still running today is an initiative called the Good Pitch, which is a pitching forum specifically for impactful films. And what we would have is rather than just sort of pitching your film, saying, hey, here's my idea, give me some money, the pitch was formatted on here's what I'm doing, but this is what I want to achieve with this film. This is my impactful goal with this film. So rather than just having film financiers listening to you, if you had a climate change film, you also had Greenpeace at the table. You might have a foundation that funds climate change work. And it was getting this group of amazing stakeholders together that collectively could create impact with your film. Because we understood the power of funding the film, but funding the impact and kind of getting its impact partners is really key. So I was sort of promoted through various roles when I was at Doc Society and really valued that sort of ability to kind of take those new roles. And one of them was convening the partners at that Good Pitch event. So bringing together all these different stakeholders. It was around sort of 400 per event, funders, nonprofits, charities, sort of broadcasters, everybody together. and then also looking at the films that we were funding, what is the impact we could have with those films? So where were they going? What were they doing? And being able to help navigate that space with our filmmakers and the potential partners they could have kind of outside of our film bubble that we all live in, because there's many other humans you need around the world to have a really comprehensive impact campaign.
That's amazing. Could you kind of bridge that experience to starting Together Films?
Yeah, definitely. So the reason I have a company now, Together Films, is because of a wonderful project I did at my time in Doc Society. And the sort of learning I kind of had in that moment, the opportunities propelled me into now running a business. So we had a film, which this anecdote now is like 11 years old, which sounds crazy when I say it out loud because it feels like it was so yesterday. We had a film called Ping Pong, which was a film about the over 80s World Table Tennis Championships. And this was, to me, just like a wonderful first time feature kind of project. It spoke to the kind of love and joy of kind of older people, kind of where they should celebrate their life and enjoy their life. And it was framed around a competition narrative. You had 8 players from around the world. They were going to these championships. They were all trying to kind of win gold at this event. And the film didn't have any kind of clear distribution routes to kind of go down at the time when we funded it. And with great support from the team at Doc Society, we decided to release the film ourselves. And we were like, well, let's just do it ourselves and see what comes of it. And what we ended up delivering, which was essentially my department and sort of the ideas I was putting forward, was a campaign which opened the film in theatres. It was then online on VOD. It was on broadcast. But we took the film on a tour across care homes, so sort of old people's homes across the UK, and ended up going to over 2,000 old people's homes. And in doing that, to be able to do that, I raised a P&A budget, a kind of impact budget of $500,000. And I was 24, 25 at the time doing this. And essentially every time I came across kind of like an idea, I was like, well, how could we do this? Rather than looking back and saying, what did all the other traditional film companies do? I kept saying, well, what does everyone else do in the world? What do the other organizers do? What do the other partners do? Let's think forward thinking rather than looking at backward kind of ideas. And this was sort of around the time that like iTunes was first launching and all these different sort of innovations were happening. So I kept just saying kind of, well, let's do it this way. Let's just try something different. And kind of just like stuck with that sort of mentality of like, well, let's just give it a go and like see what happens. And if it doesn't work, we'll try something else. And miraculously, out of nowhere, not out of nowhere, it was a lot of hard work, but managed to raise a significant amount of funding. At the time, it was the biggest amount of funding raised for a UK impact campaign, the film, which was really significant. The amount of screenings we were doing was sort of off the charts compared to other campaigns. And it really just sort of made a mark on what was possible. And from that campaign, and another one I'd done at the time with the filmmaker Penny Wilcock, a number of filmmakers were coming to me saying, hey, like, can you ping pong my film? Like, how do you do what you just did with that filmmaker? How do you do that for our title? What would be the way? And I'd not actually kind of sat down and said kind of in that year, like, what was actually the structure that we did? Like, how did we go from 0 to 2,000? How did we go from 0 in funding to $500,000? Like, what was that process? So I took a few months out. I kind of sat down and sort of really thought about the internal process I'd been through and came up with a sort of impact framework, which now drives everything we have it together. So the strategy documents that we write now, 10 years on, is essentially the framework that I sort of thought about 10 years ago when we started the business. So Together started, and I joke about this with my friends all the time, I would say to filmmakers, oh, just buy me lunch and I'll come and give you some ideas on your film. And that turned into, oh no, maybe this could actually be my job. I could actually do this for multiple filmmakers. So we started signing some sort of strategy clients. Then the clients would say, hey, well, that sounds like a lot of work. Can you do the campaigns for us? Can you run those events? Can you pitch those different partners? So it evolved very organically. There was no like set business plan on day one. It was just, I wanted to help people. And I felt that the ideas I had could help filmmakers. And as long as there was filmmakers that needed my support, I would be there to kind of help them at that moment. And that's really kept us going for 10 years. So we've run on referral as a business. Essentially 99% of our revenue has been referral since that first day, which has been really powerful. So I really love that as a human, just to know that the work we were doing was creating impact, but also gave our filmmakers sort of it kind of inspired them, it sort of engaged them, it kind of get them motivated around what they could do themselves, but also they pass that love on. So they would say to other filmmakers, hey, like call Sarah and her team, they'll be able to help you. They'll be able to give you some advice or give you some insight or run a campaign for you. And I love it now when I filmmaker from like 7 years ago, I get an email instruction to someone saying, hey, I've just been talking about you. This is a filmmaker, you should meet them. And that's one thing that we have a kind of real sense of. You talked about our culture at the start of this call. It's like we try and make sure that we're always being the sort of motivating, like best friend around a campaign. We're there to sort of help you be the best that you can be as a filmmaker. And I love that our filmmakers sort of pass that on and return that favor kind of when filmmakers say, hey, who can help? Hey, call Sarah and the team. They'll be there and they'll be able to help you.
That's amazing, and looking at how things have progressed over the years, where there's more conversation around impact and filmmaking and how it's been growing. So as Together Films has been growing, can you describe some of the challenges that you have faced and overcome with Together Films?
Yeah, definitely. So I think what's been really fascinating is seeing this growth in the impact space and also the growth in the documentary space. So we do also work on fiction, but the majority of our work is in the doc space. And I applaud companies like Dogworth, who are based in the UK, amazing documentary distributors. They changed the face of documentary distribution in the UK. I mean, single-handedly, that kind of company have done such great work on repositioning the kind of documentary market. And then you have the kind of increase in benefit of what happened when people like Netflix and others started funding documentaries at such a higher scale. We just had this like influx of momentum and support around documentary in the last 10 years to kind of grow that sector. And simultaneously, this sort of community grew around the impact space. So there's a group called the Global Impact Producers Alliance, which is a network of hundreds of individual people around the world that are working in this space. It might be a single freelancer based out of Kenya. It might be a firm of people working in New York. It's sort of big and small of everybody passionate about impact. We've also seen continued commitment from different funders in terms of people like the Ford Foundation, impact partners to work in this space. But probably the biggest single challenge that we all face is funding. Continue there's just no other way of phrasing it. It's like there's never enough money to support all the potential projects that we want to work on. We managed to secure last year, which I'm really proud about, support from a foundation here in the UK of around $500,000 to work on climate change films. And what this gave us for the very first time as an organisation was sort of that overhead support. So if a climate change film came to us, we could say, we love this project. Like, we want to work with you on this. We have the overhead support to be able to work on this without you raising any other funding. We could just get going today. And that was the best feeling possible, because having for so many years being like, okay, well, what budget have you raised? And okay, let's try and fundraise together. And we do help many of our filmmakers with their fundraising journey. But be able to say to them, hey, look, I can put $50,000 towards this campaign tomorrow. Let's just get going, was such a wonderful feeling to have. So that's something that we're now trying to prioritize, is getting additional funders like that to sort of be part of our kind of network, whilst continuing to educate and inspire new funders to continually come into this work. Because the hope is, if we can get a new funder in who's passionate about it, that helps many other filmmakers not working with us even, but there's a new person there who's passionate about this space. So yeah, funding all day, every day is the new thing. And we've just brought on a wonderful new teammate, actually, Lindsay Barrett, who's in our New York team. She used to be the head of grants at the International Documentary Association. And she's now leading our fundraising efforts and fundraising sort of networking introductions and just the day-to-day like grant writing that's required to land some of those kind of new funders in the fold.
Wow. So you guys who are listening, if you've got a climate change bill, you know where to go for your impact strategies.
Yes, definitely.
So as you're bringing in filmmakers and new clients, and I know we talked about this a little bit when I was an intern, but you really talked about the role of technology in the work that you do. So could you talk a little bit about, the importance of technology with this type of work?
Yeah. So I am a self-professed geek. I love a spreadsheet. I love data. I just don't know how to function without systems. Like my brain is just wired like that. I'm very open about the fact that I have quite bad anxiety just as a human. And for me, systems bring order, systems bring clarity, systems just make the day better. So for me, data is really, really key. What I found over time and working at scale on these campaigns. So if I was working kind of as a single freelancer doing one campaign, you could maybe have sort of a little bit less regard for having accurate data. Once you get to a campaign where you've got more than like 25 events or more than like 20 partners, you've got to have a system. It's so, so important. So some of the things that we have as an organization, which might not be suitable for everybody, but for us are really, really important. So one is a CRM system, a customer relationship management system. This is essentially a giant address book of all the partners we've ever contacted, all the screening hosts we've worked with, people that we've requested tweets from, people who we've applied for funding from. We have to make sure that all that data is in one place because we have a bigger team now. We have 14 team members across multiple different countries. We need to know who we're speaking to at what time, what they're saying. So you can start with a basic system like Airtable is really proficient for these kind of systems, kind of tracking everything in there. We've actually built a number of Airtable operational systems for our clients to be able to map this information. So CRM sort of really, really crucial. Then using sort of form structures. So for screening requests, you don't just email our team, like you fill out a form because forms bring structure. So it's like, who are you? Where are you based? What city are you in? What's your zip code? Do you have budget for this event? Would you like to invite the filmmaker? It's kind of building up all that information into a centralized kind of place. We then use, mainly because of the lockdown, a number of sort of virtual screening platforms. So we can host screenings in multiple countries with different subtitle kind of provisions, abilities to sort of expand our kind of network dramatically. And we learned that all through lockdown. So I actually ran a kind of webinar series called Digital Perspectives during lockdown, where we were informing and educating a variety members of the film industry on how to do virtual streaming events so that we could reach bigger audiences.
When would you say is the best time for a filmmaker to think about their impact campaign?
So for me, as early as possible. So there's a really big trend at the moment when we're looking at sort of how distribution is working around the world, what distributors are doing, how your film actually comes out. Brian Newman, a really good kind of colleague and friend in New York, did a post about this week, that as producers, it is as important for you to think about making the film as to how the film's going to come out. And especially if you need to raise funding to help with that distribution release, even if it's just covering your festival costs. If you get into Sundance, it's really expensive to go there. So everyone's like, let's get into Sundance. And I'm like, great. Do you have $15,000 to pay to get yourself there? It's like you have to have resource ready to go. So for me, the earlier you can start planning, if you need to raise funding, if you need to build partnerships, that is going to help you dramatically. So we say to our filmmakers, we can help from development through to distribution. Really, it's like late stage development. We think kind of spend your resourcing on the film to develop at the start. But once you're sort of really clear on what it is you're making, you've got your sort of thesis, you've really planned out what this film is going to be, we can sort of come in and help at that point. Development, and that might just be like a one-day session, sort of let's kind of get these goals in place, let's put together a strategy document with you or kind of help with some ideas. But if you need to raise funding, you can then kind of sprint off from that point as it goes through. Where we see filmmakers really struggle is where they spend, and let's think about the average feature documentary, that's 4 or 5 years in production. So you spent 4 or 5 years making this film, this gorgeous, beautiful, cinematic, kind of brilliant film that you've made. And right at the very end, after 5 years in production, you then turn around and go, oh, what am I going to do now? Where's this going to go? Who's going to see this? How am I going to get out of the world? You've wasted so much time. If you'd spent 1 hour a week from the first day of development, just 1 hour a week, saying, okay, if my film is about human rights, who are the human rights organizers in this state? Who are the human rights film festivals around the world? Which distributors focus on films about that? Just 1 hour a week from the start of your film, you would have the most incredible network. You would know all the funders in the space. You would know all of your partners. You would have a chance to meet them, have a coffee with them, have a Zoom with them. You can do so much if you spent 1 hour a week. If you try and fast track that once your film is already finished, you're like a year behind everybody else who got started earlier. So I cannot say enough. Get started as early as possible as you can. And 1 hour a week is so doable. Like, if you're also making your film around another job, we know many filmmakers are also making their films around full-time employment or other work that you're doing, especially when it's a passion project or an impact project. So fitting in an hour a week, 2 hours a week, you can kind of create a great strategy. You can network with your partners. You can put in those funding applications. The average foundation funding application is 6 months from application to potentially getting funding on average. So at least you've got to start 6 months before your film's finished. So you've got some of that funding kind of ready to go. So the earlier, the better. And the other thing I say to filmmakers is that we're really good at research, especially in the documentary space. We're excellent at research. Who's going to be in the film? Who's the expert on the table around this? Which person do we want to interview for this particular scene? All those lists of experts and people and organizers, and here's a quote from the New York Times about my kind of issue, and here's a quote from this report. We should put this as a stat in the film. All of those people should be engaged when your film comes out. Like, your article inspired me to go and interview this person. And God, that statistic that we've put at the end of the first act, so like, we should do an event around that. There's so much incredible data that you're collecting during production that can help inspire what you could do with your impact campaign when you come out in the world.
That's amazing. So guys listening, don't wait. Don't wait on working on your impact campaign. You can start right in the beginning. I'm taking that to heart. I'm in development for a film. I am taking that advice to heart. Just to kind of wrap up, what are the ways that a filmmaker can work with together films?
So there's a few different ways that filmmakers can work with us. Firstly is with strategy and sort of ideation. So we have a wonderful strategy team. So this might be as simple as a half day Zoom session with you. It could be a 1 day in person sort of lab with you, or it could be a period of 3 months working very intently with a film team on what their strategy could look like. And Dija, you had the privilege of to kind of look at those strategies, look at that process that we go through, kind of who is your audience? Like, what are your objectives? What are your goals? How would we track if we're having success? What's your evaluation plan? So we can be sort of light touch or kind of deep work in a strategy phase with someone. And sometimes we just give that back to the filmmaker and say, hey, here is your plan. You've now got your goals. You've now got your objectives. You've now got a vision. You can go and run this. If you can make a film, you can absolutely have the skills to go and run this yourself. It's skills of scheduling, it's production, it's sort of management. You can absolutely make this happen. For other people, we then run the campaigns for them. So either you have a strategy already, you've already got some thinking in place, or you want to kind of work with us to get those ideas together, and then we can run it for you. So this might be film festival kind of management. This might be non-theatrical screening campaigns. So for some of our projects, it might be organising 10 events. For others, it's organising 250 events across multiple countries. So there's kind of campaign strategy and campaign delivery. And we also do this for filmmakers, but also for film festivals, because we can kind of give the strategy and kind of audience insight around festivals as well. And then our new division is a sales division. So previously we'd work very, very closely with kind of our third party kind of companies who would be managing sales to platforms like Netflix, BBC, Channel 4, PBS. We're now doing that on behalf of our filmmakers directly. So for some people, we do all three of those things. And for others, we just do the sales, or we just do the kind of strategy and campaign management. And this means that we can really kind of tie in all of the goals that a filmmaker has, which one of them being usually, I'd also like some commercial performance from this title. So I want to be able to kind of make some money back from my investors. I want to be able to be seen on a big platform to get the biggest audience. And before, this would be with a third party company. We've worked with many sales agents that we adore, but it was just nice for us to bring this back under one house. So we're really excited that we're actually now about to announce our first slate for the sales side, which will be announced this summer, with some really fantastic festival premieres coming up. And again, these are all films that have an impact kind of obsession with the film. So it might be the whole film is about an issue, it might be one scene, one character, but every film has to touch on those impactful themes for us to sign it for the sales side.
Wow, thank you so much for your time today, Sarah. Thank you, baby, for joining us.
those listening in and not watching video, my baby midway through, I just had a baby 3 months ago, needed some food, so she came to join us on this moment. But I also give a shout out to every working mother that is out there, because it is a joy and a privilege. It is hectic, but
Yes.
it's also made me really value my time, my sort of my view on the world has completely changed in 3 months, which has been mad. But yeah, she is now currently part of this recording as well.
That's beautiful. I'll just end with, as my kids have grown up and they see me continue to like push on my dreams and keep following my purpose, it does impact our kids to see that and help them say like I can do that because mom's doing that. So I'm excited to see what baby grows up to do.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, well, thanks so much, Sarah. Oh, where can people find you?
Yes, so togetherfilms.org is our website. I'm normally quite active on Twitter and LinkedIn, so just come find me at Sarah Mosses, Mosses with two S's in the middle, Mosses. Yeah, come follow me on Twitter, LinkedIn, say hey. Would be great to hear from any listeners.
Thank you so much, and we'll see you guys on the next episode of Film for Impact. Bye.
Bye.